The future is now. Bringing you my rest of season rankings heading into week 11 fantasy football. And we started off in the S tier of running backs. And we have Saquon Barkley. What a glorious Thursday night football game where he didn't do anything until the fourth quarter and looked absolutely Saquon elite. Gotta have him here as the RB1. We got Bijan Robinson with that high level receiving upside. He's getting the snap share. He's getting all the work you could want. But then you still have Derrick Henry and CMC sliding into the top 4 running backs. It has never been this deep at the top for the running back position heading into week 11. So you definitely need to be happy if you do have one of these top 4 elite level running backs. Good to see CMC making it back into the overall S tier, getting all the work on his first week back with the 49ers. And we got Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyren Williams, Joe Mixon. We all know why these guys are up here in the elite level tier. They're getting insane volume. Jahmyr Gibbs is having a really great efficiency year, having to share touches with David Montgomery. Absolutely love it here in the S tier. We move on to the A tier. And I think Alvin Kamara was someone that I debated putting in the S tier, but I just decided to lead him off on the A tier. It doesn't diminish his overall value because he's sliding in right now as my RB7 rest of the season. But then we have Alvin Kamara, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, and Josh Jacobs. And the thing that with this list of guys, we got some guys like Alvin Kamara at the top where you could maybe argue should be closer to the S tier. And then we got some guys that maybe have some warts where Devon has looked really great with Tua Tagovailoa coming back. Kenneth Walker, we need to see him kind of get back to that amazing magic that he had early on in the season. Breece Hall is somebody else that makes it here on to the A tier, and it hasn't looked great for Breece Hall. He continues to kind of fall down my rankings. He's on average 5 yards per carry over the last 3 games, but like we said, it hasn't been elite level numbers at all. Really pretty end, low end RB3, but we just got to have hope. Indy, Seattle, Miami, he's got some decent matchups coming down the line. The Colts haven't allowed more than 6 total touchdowns, so I am a little bit worried about Breece Hall's ranking here in the A tier, but that's fine. James Cook, Jonathan Taylor. Can Jonathan Taylor and A-Rich really coexist? That's going to be the really good question for Jonathan Taylor's overall value. I think Jonathan Taylor is the one guy in this tier that I could see moving up into the beginning of the A tier. And then Josh Jacobs, he's had pretty good volume for the Green Bay Packers, but it's hard for me to push him any higher because it does feel like Josh Jacobs is a little touchdown dependent to get that overall elite level fantasy football output week in and week out. We then move to the B tier, and Chase Brown made flying, and I mean a flying run up to this B tier for me this week. I love Chase Brown. I love his rest of season output for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like I said, he's moving up the boards a lot. We got Aaron Jones. Tyrone Tracy also has moved up my overall boards here. Like I said, I think the running back position is one where there's a lot of these guys that I would argue are way more valuable at this point than their wide receiver counterparts at the similar position value, which if you would have asked us last year, we would have said, hey, the wide receivers are more valuable. But Chase Brown, Aaron Jones, Tyrone Tracy, James Conner, David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift, you have to feel good if you own any of these guys here in the B tier. Absolutely love what we're seeing out of these running backs. So we moved to the C tier, and we got Brian Robinson, we got Chuba Hubbard. And you might say, hey, Caleb, Chuba Hubbard should go ahead of Brian Robinson. I hear you. That was a debate that I had over the last 2 days. So those guys are very, very, very close for me. J.K. Dobbins, Tony Pollard, Bucky Irving, Najee Harris, Isaiah Pacheco, and Kareem Hunt. It was hard for me really to decide what to do with both Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco because Isaiah Pacheco has been listed off of IR. So it's going to be only a matter of time before Isaiah Pacheco snatches into Kareem Hunt's overall role. But can both these guys coexist with each other, or is it going to be like the full Isaiah Pacheco show when he gets back? I feel like the Chiefs are going to want to keep Isaiah Pacheco a little bit healthier for the playoffs. So that was kind of my thoughts there with the C tier. The D tier, we got Tank Bigsby, we got Rico Dowdle, Rashad White, Nick Chubb, Jalen Warren, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason as a high priority handcuff, Javonte Williams, who's been essentially replaced by Audric Estime, but we'll have to see if Javonte Williams can make a push back up the board, Austin Eckler, and then Alexander Madison to round out our running back rankings. Now we move on to the wide receiver rankings, and we got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, and Drake London here in the S tier this week. And yes, Malik Neighbors has moved out of my S tier. That's what someone will say, but these 2 top guys at the top, you feel really great about it. AJ Brown didn't have the best Thursday night game, but I still feel very confident in AJ Brown over Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nico Collins coming back hopefully this week, let a lot of people down on Monday night of last week. Hopefully he doesn't let us down this week. And then Drake London is getting an insane volume share at the wide receiver position. Move on to the A tier, and I will say this, between Drake London, Puka Nacua, and Malik Neighbors, it's pretty tight for me. So maybe I should have just had Drake London here in this A tier, but like I said, I think Drake London was deserving of the S tier this week, but I do have Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Cooper Kupp, and then Jaden Reed to round out my A tier. And I know probably some of the discussion in this tier is going to be like, Caleb, how do you have Tyreek Hill above Garrett Wilson, especially with the way that Tyreek Hill has played this season? Really, for me, it's that overall upside with the wrist. Yes, Tyreek Hill was limited in practice this week. Yes, are we a little bit worried that if things continue to go down the can for the Dolphins, that they might just shut down Tyreek Hill for the season? Sure, that is a little bit of a worry, but I feel very good about Tyreek Hill still. I still want that upside on my roster. Now, Jaden Reed has made his way back up my rest of season rankings with this last week performance of 6 targets, 5 receptions for 113 yards. We finally saw him really break back out into the wide receiver that I thought he was going to be. He's only had 1 red zone target this season, so that's kind of the biggest drawback for Jaden Reed is he doesn't get a ton of touchdowns. Right now, he's sitting on the season at 3. So it does feel a little like DJ Moore, Carolina-esque, where he's getting a ton of volume, just maybe not the overall touchdown upside. But I still feel like I love Jaden Reed here in my A tier. Love what Cooper Kupp's doing. So you let me know what you would change in this A tier. But I do think the wide receiver position has definitely been a letdown compared to the overall running back position. And when we get to this B tier, I think this is where the tier for me, where I was like, okay, we got some interesting discussions to be had. So we got George Pickens, of course, at the top. Has been balling out with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf. Debo's been slightly a letdown in this overall wide receiver 1 role for the San Francisco 49ers. Marv had a big week last week. Zay Flowers, what's going to happen with him and Deontay Johnson? Even though Deontay Johnson really hasn't been a factor the last 2 weeks. CeeDee Lamb feels like I might have just put him here for the name recognition alone, getting the ball thrown to him by Will Grier, Cooper Rush, Trey Lance clearly is going to hinder the Cowboys offense rest of season. Darnell Mooney is dealing with an injury, but has looked very good with an elite level target share, top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football right now. Move on to the C tier, and this is where things start to get even juicier. We got Devontae Adams for the Jets. We got Devontae Smith, DeAndre Hopkins for the Chiefs, but he's competing, with Travis Kelce, and they have a really elite level rushing attack. As much as we think it could be the second coming of Tom Brady, Randy Moss, are they going to pass enough and have enough volume for DeAndre Hopkins to have weekly be in and out? Mike Evans, a lot of people told me in my last week, my ranking of Mike Evans was atrocious. Like we said, right now he's not playing. So if he plays, he's easily going to get moved up to the B tier, if not the A tier, just so everyone's aware. With his current value right now, with him not playing, have him here in the C tier. But then we got T. Higgins, Khalil Shakir, and then Josh Downs. Even with Josh Downs playing with Anthony Richardson, I still have him in my C tier. Move on to the D tier. We got Tank Dell, Brian Thomas Jr., especially with no Trevor Lawrence, had to push Brian Thomas down. Amari Cooper, can the man ever get healthy with this wrist injury? A lot of people are speculating that he did fracture his wrist, and if he doesn't play this week, I'm going to kind of lean that way. It's just weird that they haven't really reported that. It's been a weird injury for the Buffalo Bills. Jalen Waddle, Ladd McConkey, Chris Olave, Cedric Tillman. Maybe I should put Cedric Tillman. I think we could honestly discuss Cedric Tillman should be maybe ahead of Amari Cooper, Jalen Waddle. But like I said, this tier is just a weird one. And of course, we're waiting to see if Chris Olave, when he's going to come back. And then I ended off with JSN here in the D tier. We move on to the E tier. DJ Moore, Jamison Williams, Jacoby Myers, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton, and Michael Pittman Jr. And like I said, guys, we are on the way to 4,000 subscribers. We're literally 25 subscribers away. So if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Answer an all-start sit questions down below. So once you guys here in the community, it's absolutely amazing. We're rounding it out towards the fantasy football playoffs. And my whole goal this whole season has been to help you win a fantasy football championship. So appreciate it if you guys would subscribe, because it does help me out a ton. And I want you here in the community to answer any questions you do have. Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Romeo Dubs, Romo Dunze, even with the struggling Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, Keenan Allen, and Ricky Pearsall round off my rankings here in the F tier. And I said this last week, Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings are like the same player to me right now in my rankings until one really starts to overtake the other. So I do have Ricky and Jawan Jennings here. I know I don't have a picture of Jawan Jennings, but just wanted to highlight that. And we round out the last and final tier with Jalen McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, we got through our wide receivers, and now we move to our overall tight ends. And we got Travis Kelce retaking the throne. I think these 4 guys, we've been kind of mix matching them for the rest of season rankings. Main reason I just put Travis Kelce is because I just feel like good old reliable is going to get us to where we need to go as the tight end 1 rest of the season. Trey McBride is definitely on the come up. I think you could argue definitely between Trey McBride, Travis Kelce. Brock Bowers, who was my tight end 1 for most of the season, I still feel very confident in as a top 3 option at this point, but definitely him and George Kittle, it feels like we got to just lean the Trey McBride, Travis Kelce side, but a lot of that is recency bias based on how both of them performed last week. We then have the A tier, and Kate Otten If Cade Otton does what Cade Otton does when he comes back from bye, I think there's no reason not to put Cade Otton up in the S tier. It was very close. It was very close to me. If you have Cade Otton, you got to feel really good about getting an elite level tight end off the waiver wire. Evan Ingram, David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson is all the way back, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm pumped to continue to see the rise of TJ Hawkinson. Mark Andrews, pushing Mark Andrews back up into the A tier. We've seen enough that Mark Andrews is starting to get his feet back under him. The Isaiah Likely scare that we had earlier this season, no need to worry about. In the B tier, we got Tucker Kraft, we got Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, still the struggling Sam Laporta. Maybe I should have bumped Sam Laporta down, but he's not struggling as much as Dalton Kincaid. So Dalton Kincaid, nowhere to be seen here in the B tier. Cole Kmet, and then Jake Ferguson, who was higher up in our rankings with Dak Prescott, of course gets lowered. Same way with CeeDee Lamb, as this passing attack is very much struggling for the Dallas Cowboys. We move on to the C tier. Dalton Kincaid, like I said, he's at this point, it's almost like name value alone, where it's hard for me when you're playing with Josh Allen to push you any lower. If Dawson Knox performs this week and Dalton Kincaid's not playing, we might be looking at some serious discussions to be had with Dalton Kincaid and his overall value. Mike Gesicki seems like a great value pick when he doesn't play with T. Higgins. So interesting with Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry, and then Pat Freiermuth to round out the tight end rankings. We move on to the quarterback rankings, and we started off here in the S tier. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, the top two for me this week. Jalen Hurts sliding in as my QB3. Ultimate level rushing upside, the tush push is like undefeated. Even though Jalen Hurts didn't have a great game on Thursday night, Jalen Hurts still somehow puts up decent fantasy football points. Nevertheless, Jaden Daniels has kind of been on a downward spiral, downward trajectory in the overall rankings, which is sad because I thought there was a chance that Jaden Daniels as a rookie was going to be the QB1 for us rest of the season, but he did still slide in as a top 4. All these guys, Konami code, ability to rush, very, very high. And then we kind of round out the S tier with Joe Burrow and Brock Purdy, 2 elite level passers that have been absolutely destroying it for fantasy football. Gotta feel good if you have any quarterback here in the S tier. Move on to the A tier, and Kyler Murray, the up and down year. I think we thought Kyler Murray would be a guy that ends up in the S tier. Was not necessarily the case. We got Jordan Love. We got Patrick Mahomes, who Patrick Mahomes is kind of back up on a little bit of an upswing for us here over the last few weeks. So like I said, I think that's the cutoff of the guys that I'm like, okay, I feel like I have like an every week starter. And then we kind of get into like Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, Kirk Cousins. Like after what Jared Goff did this last week, 4 interceptions, absolutely brutal. We'll have to see how Jared Goff bounces back, but Jared Goff has put up better fantasy football points than CJ Stroud. So that's where he gets kind of the push up the rest of season rankings over CJ Stroud and Kirko, Coles, Cash, Kirk. Move on to the B tier, and Baker Mayfield, I still have in the B tier. And I know there's a lot of you that are like, Caleb, you're a freaking idiot. Baker needs to be higher. Like that was said on the last video by like 3 people. I hear you. I still have Baker in the B tier. I think until Mike Evans comes back, Baker's just, like I said, he's right there on the fringe. He's right there on the fringe. He's right there in the same conversation as Kirk and CJ Stroud for me. And so I understand if you really like Baker. There's a lot of people that absolutely love Baker. So I hear you on those arguments. But like I said, B tier, Bo Nix, Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, Drake May continues to move up the board, even with his lack of weapons, and then Geno Smith rounding out the B tier. And then in my C tier, yes, Anthony Richardson has remade an appearance since he will be starting this week. I don't know how high to push Anthony Richardson, and especially if you're desperate at quarterback, like the Konami code upside of Anthony Richardson, it's intriguing, but we also know all the bonehead moves that he does make. So between Tua, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson has made his appearance for the first time in the rest of the season rankings. Thought it was very appropriate to put Russell Wilson here in the C tier. I think a lot of people are going to say he should be in the B tier. Once we kind of get into this QB2, like QB12 to like QB16, 17 range, it's a lot of mumble jumble, ladies and gentlemen. So kind of just depends on your overall value, your overall flavor on these quarterbacks. But if you like fantasy football, if you like winning, check out these 2 videos. If you haven't, subscribe to the channel, as we're 25 subscribers away from hitting 4,000. We will be going live on Friday night, and we will be answering all of our start sit questions in each and every video. So once you guys here in the community, check out these 2 videos if you haven't, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.